Hey everyone, back tuning into today's video. Well, the papers are full of headlines about heat waves coming back, and actually the Express is saying that we're going to have a hotter spell coming up than we've already had this summer. A hotter spell of the summer. I can't see much evidence for it personally. I'm going to run through the charts and see if we can find this heat wave. But to be honest, I'm having a bit of a job to see exactly where this is coming from this time. Certainly in the next week to 10 days. Beyond that, of course, it could get very hard. It's still summer, so even out to the start of September, you can very occasionally get it really hot even into the start of September. But certainly for the next week to 10 days, I can't see anything particularly deviating away from what you would typically expect, really, in the middle of August. Maybe a little bit above average at times, and some days coming out a little bit below average, and just depending on the way that the air mass changes day by day, but nothing really that out of the ordinary, in my opinion. Now, before I go on with the video, I just want to talk about the advertising. There's green keyword ads on my pages at gazmobiles.com. If you roll your cursor over green keywords, they will display ads, but if you click through the word, that's the key, click through the word, you'll go to the advertised website, and by doing that you're supporting gazmobiles.com, and thanks very much for doing that. So we'll start off with a 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts from the ECMWF and the GFS. This is for the anomaly for 8 to 10 days time, so this is taking us anything to around the 17th or 18th of August, so quite a way into August now. We are talking about sort of late summer weather conditions. We've got the ECMWF here on the left, the GFS is over on the right. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is where weather is occurring, because we're getting high pressure, low pressure developing in the atmosphere, and it's really as those areas of high pressure, low pressure moved around by the jet stream that we get weather. Of course, it's a lot more complex than that, but at its most basic, that is what weather is, the movement of air masses by the jet stream. So the ECMWF is showing that we've got the Azores high out in the Atlantic, and the GFS is also showing that we've got high pressure out in the Atlantic, so they're both agreeing on that aspect of the 500 millibar height anomalies. But where they differ is that the ECMWF is got quite a deep trough there, sitting just to the north of the country. Actually, that trough is extending down into the British Isles. Now, that's different to the GFS, because the GFS wants to ridge its high pressure in from the Atlantic and move it over the United Kingdom and stretch it up towards Scandinavia. So the GFS is rather more settled. It's a warmer, not particularly hot, but it is a warmer scenario than the ECMWF. The ECMWF is a little bit more unsettled and consequently would be a little bit cooler, but they're not that far away, and it wouldn't take much of an adjustment actually for the ECMWF to come into line with the GFS, and they both have a ridge of high pressure sitting around the British Isles in 8 to 10 days time. That would be very pleasant. It would be lifting temperatures up to say the mid-20s, something like that, 25, 26, 27 degrees around the 80 Fahrenheit mark, but certainly no higher than that, because we would still be generally running Atlantic air in with the GFS, so temperatures would be limited somewhat from certainly what we saw in July, where the air mass was generally coming up from the continent. Now, have a look at the GFS temperature ensembles. We can see that we're going to be a little bit below average and a little bit above average, but not deviating much from the average for quite some time. So the thick red line here is where we should be at this time of year. Many members of the ensemble currently a little bit below average. That's why we're getting some relatively cool nights just at the moment. It is notably cooler at night, but still quite warm by day. We're going to be going back up towards the average for Friday. Then over the weekend, we're going to get a bit of a temperature dip, actually, going to around the 12th of August. We're going to be some way above the red line. It's going to be some way below the red line, should say, some way below average. Then temperatures will recover a little bit through next week, getting up towards the seasonal norm, but nothing particularly exceptional. And we sort of keep that going for the rest of the ensemble then, although by the time we get through to, say, the 21st, 22nd, we might be starting to see some hotter members appearing then. So maybe as we get into the final week or so of August, we may get some hotter weather then. Of course, by the time you get through to late August, August, you're struggling then to push the temperatures up into the 90s Fahrenheit. It's always harder later in August to get those temperatures going up above 90 Fahrenheit. And the reason is that the sun is rapidly starting to lose its energy, its strength as you get through to the end of August. You can still get temperatures up into the 90 Fahrenheit mark at the end of August, even into the start of September. Very occasionally you'll get the temperatures up to 90 Fahrenheit, but it's much harder late August, early September to do that than it is, say, mid to late August. Now, not many precipitation spikes either coming up, so a relatively settled period. Certainly for London will always be more unsettled for northern parts of the country. The ECMWF temperature ensembles for the surface, those temperature ensembles from the GFS model that we were just looking at for the upper atmosphere, ECMWF ensembles from EssexWeather.com for the surface, showing that again we're going to be around where we should be. This is 22 Celsius just here, that's where we are for today. Can go a bit below that as we go into the weekend, going down towards the low 20s, and then up into the 21-22 Celsius mark again, then maybe dipping down a bit, then going back up a bit. And it's sort of that idea, but we're hovering around the average, sometimes going a little bit above, sometimes going a little bit below, but really not deviating that far from the seasonal normal. The temperature anomalies from the GFS model show that from the 8th to the 15th of August we're going to be around normal. We're in the very pale colours, so again we're not deviating much from the seasonal average. A little bit above maybe 1 or 2 degrees, perhaps in the south, a little bit below maybe in the north. Only by 1 or 2 degrees, so certainly nothing to write home about in terms of the temperatures in the next week or so. So have a look at the generic charts. This is the GFS first of all, and this is the chart for Monday the 12th. We've got high pressure out in the Atlantic, low pressure up to the northeast of the country. This is from the 6 o'clock run. It has changed a little bit from the midnight run. We'll see what's gone on there in a moment. But as we go through to Tuesday and Wednesday, really we're keeping the ridge of high pressure there to the south. We're keeping the low pressure running from the north. So it's going to be quite warm in the south. It'll be pretty settled. Temperatures maybe up to 24, 25, 26 degrees, somewhere into the mid to upper 70s Fahrenheit. Very pleasant, but don't think you can really call that a heat wave. And the reason is that, again, despite the fact high pressure is still quite influential to the south, we're generally keeping the air off the Atlantic, so that's the reason that's happening. And that's how we go into Thursday as well, with the high pressure to the south, the low pressure to the north, very much as you were through much of next week. Now, as we go through towards the last stages of next week and into next weekend, this is Saturday the 17th of August and running through to Sunday the 18th of August. Then there's signs on the 6 o'clock run that we start to bring low pressure through across the country. I'm not sure that's quite right. It may be more settled than that, but again, there's certainly up to the 18th of August and nothing there to suggest we're going to have a return of hot conditions. Just have a quick look at the upper air temperatures through next week. We start off with the upper air temperatures quite cool there. We've got the 5 Celsius iceberg out of the country. That is really quite cool there, but as we run through next week, we will increase the upper air temperature somewhat through to the middle of next week. They go up to 10 Celsius and 850 millibars. That's pretty warm, but it's not heatwave territory, and that's really how we go into Thursday and Friday as well, with the 10 Celsius isotherm across England and Wales, with 5 Celsius isotherm across Scotland. So it's warm in the south, it's relatively cool in the north, not really deviating that far from where we should be. And towards next weekend, then we start to bring cooler air back in off the Atlantic with that area of low pressure that we have seen on the 6 o'clock run. ECMWF, very similar next week, the low pressure off to the east coast of Scotland, high pressure out in the Atlantic on Monday, running through to Tuesday and into Wednesday. It's all very similar. The high pressure is trying to ridge into the south, but we're always keeping low pressure influences away to the northwest, so the wind will remain generally Atlantic based, so it's never going to get all that hot. And as we run through to Thursday and on into Friday, very similar conditions really. Low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, not particularly interesting conditions to be honest. And we end the ECMWF run actually bringing a deeper area of low pressure in across the country. That could be bringing cloud and rain for all areas on Sunday the 18th of August. So that's in line with the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. Actually, they are both in agreement on on that aspect, but it's 10 days away sometime after GM finally, and it's just going to really agree with the other models. So I'll just quickly run through these. Again, the high pressure to the south through the middle of next week, the low pressure to the north of Scotland as we run through to the latter stages of next week. Generally keeping high pressure out to west and low pressure up to the north. So not a lot going on there, to be honest. It's around where we should be for time of year. Again, maybe by the time we get through to Sunday the 18th, 10 days away, we could just bring a stronger area of low pressure through, which could bring rain for many of us. So certainly for next week to 10 days, there is no sign of a heat wave that I can see. And if that is, I've not read the Express article, by the way, if that is the period that they are suggesting we're going to get a heat wave for, I can't see any signs back. Now, beyond that, of course, it could always turn hotter into the latter stages of August. It may well do. But it's a struggle. It will be a struggle late August. It will be a struggle to beat July's temperatures in the latter stages of August. It can happen, but I wouldn't rate it much more than around a 10 to 20% chance, to be honest. It's always harder late August, early September to get the temperatures above 90 Fahrenheit than it is earlier in the summer. But for the next week to 10 days at least, we're sailing around normal sort of conditions. Sometimes we'll dip a little bit below, sometimes go a little bit above. But the Atlantic is going to be dominating. We're going to have high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, and very much really continuation of what we've had through August so far. Always more unsettled in the north, always drier in the south, and temperatures warmish in the south, but nothing that would suggest heat wave. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.